So anyway, man, now you're out all the way. Now you're working. Like, what's that doing for you? You know?
So it's different, right?
Yeah.
Because I got out and we moved up to San Jose, and I started working for a fintech company up there, PayPal.
Yeah.
I did that for about a year and a half, and then moved back down here and went to school, which we can talk about later.
Mm-hmm.
And I had all these great irons in the fire coming out of school in like February, and then like everything just went away in the middle of March. Like all of my job opportunities, I was like, you got to be kidding me. Because
that's tough, man.
I had some stuff lined up with a couple other larger tech companies that looked like they weren't job offers, but it was definitely like, third round interview stuff that was going to lead to something, right? One of them was going to strike, and then they all just kind of went away. I was like, well, this is neat. I got this master's degree, and I just left my great paying job. So now I got a kid, and I'm about to be unemployed. But ended up going back to PayPal in a completely different area of the company, doing some working on data solutions for them, which is pretty interesting stuff. And so now I'm getting paid more. I get to live in San Diego instead of San Jose, which was awful.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was miserable.
See, a lot of people would think that would be a nice place to live.
Yeah, it's so expensive.
Well,
we were talking about how expensive it is down here.
Yeah.
I remember when we moved back down here from up there, it's like, oh man, this place is so cheap.
Like, what am I going to do with all this extra money?
I have all this extra money right now.
Imagine living anywhere else in the country.
Yeah.
Other than like New York City.
Yeah. Well, you can look at all those videos on YouTube of the houses in Texas. Like, this is what you could get for $1 million, and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
So, but
you can become Tiger King.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Dude, working at PayPal doing data stuff, that's like the new thing, right? I mean, that's like the big thing right now is being able to get into these tech companies, especially if you have a data background, you can parse through all that shit. What are you guys doing? Like, what kind of data do you work with?
So I work on the risk side of the business, and we basically look at any kind of underwriting that products that PayPal has, right? Because PayPal's more than just like the little PayPal button or anything. Like, they own Venmo. They own a company called Braintree, which does a lot of like back-end payment processing that you have no idea that it's run by PayPal, right? So we look at, and then they also do lending. So like small business loans.
Yep.
They do PayPal credit, which is like installment payments for things up to a certain amount of money. And then they've got these new things like, have you heard of a firm where you can pay over time for like a pair of shoes, right? So like I bought a putter to try out this product that PayPal has called Pay in 4, and you just pay over 4 equal installments, right?
It's like the old layaway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's so there's no interest, and at the end of the day, it's a loan, right?
Yeah.
So there's risk involved in anything, any kind of credit card. So we look at all of the different characteristics of either a person or a business who borrows money, and then basically try and identify how risky it is to loan to them.
Yeah.
Right? And so I've got a team of developers who make all these products, work in India, and they build all of these risk products, and then I turn around and talk to the business side of PayPal and, make sure that everything that what the people are building is useful for them. Right?
Okay.
So I'll sit in on different meetings and like tweak things based off of what I'm hearing, or manage all of the inputs from, the 50 or 60 different people that use our products, like as power users.
Yeah. Yeah. There's got to be a lot of people right now that are like trying to get loans for things, and like it's probably a tough time. It's got to be tough too to like develop software that tells people no, basically. Like, you're a little too risky to. I'm not going to let you get $50, bro. Sorry.
Yeah. And I mean,
what kind of inputs are you looking at? Obviously income and stuff like that.
Yeah, like credit scores, but they do a lot of other. The way that PayPal does it is it's not just necessarily like a traditional bank. Right?
Yeah.
They can look at all of your PayPal history, and so like you could have a shit credit score, but based off of the way that you have paid things in the past using PayPal products, they could identify, be like, okay, this guy made some mistakes 10 years ago, but
he's obviously paying
he's
everything.
Been fine lately. So
see, this is one of the positive things I think of the data mining that tech companies do. You know, this is like one of the good things. People can see it as a bad thing too, and it's like becomes like a dangerous thing, I guess, at some point. But I think people only look at the extreme dangers of like pulling data, and sometimes they forget to, like, especially people that are sharing that. There's a documentary on Netflix. I can't remember what it's called now. Like,
yeah, I know what I know the one you're talking about.
It makes everything sound like the worst possible.
That social media one, right?
Yeah. And it's right. Like, it is right where it's like pulling your data. Like, people are saving your data, but they make everything sound like super nefarious. You know, like it's all bad stuff. But it's like, dude, you know, this is how they can make smart business decisions and stuff like that. It's also, I don't know. It's crazy that we give up as much data as we do, though.
Yeah, most people don't realize it. And I mean, obviously, because I work for the company, I'm going to say it's a good cause, right? But I truly believe that the stuff that they're doing is for the greater good. It's not like they're not mining your data to, you know, use it for a bad cause.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those missions that you can kind of, you know, get behind. So
it's weird for me that people didn't realize this was like a thing.
Yeah.
You know, this is like people are coming out like, what? I didn't realize all my information. It's like, where have you been the last decade, man? That's kind of been the whole deal with social media and stuff like that. And that's kind of been the thing from the beginning. Like, hey, careful putting your stuff out there. Right. But I don't know. PayPal's had a pretty good history. I don't think they've had too many issues or anything like that. Do you think your program, so you did the Masters of Business for Veterans at USC, which is really cool. So I'd like you to talk about that so people kind of have an idea. I might actually take this clip and cut it out. So if you be as specific as you want, talk about the MBV program and why it's good for veterans, how it applies, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the program came about 10 years ago based off of an initiative from California where they wanted to have higher education for veterans more accessible, right? So they started this program, and basically Master of Business for Veterans goes through USC Marshall School of Business. So you get access to all of the same professors, the same quality of education, right, that USC Marshall MBA student would get. So very good reputation as a school, like great campus, all of that stuff.
Campus is real nice.
Yeah. We went up there for a football game at one time.
Yeah.
So it's all veterans. And it's interesting the like wide swath of veterans you get, right? Because me going into it, I thought that I would be the oldest dude at the program by far. Because if I went to a regular MBA, I'd definitely be, you know, top 10% of the oldest people going through a program right now. But
really,
yeah, it's mostly like late 20s.
Oh, okay.
That go through it, you know. So, but people of all different ages, all different experience levels. So, I mean, there were some guys that were E4s, got out, went to college, went and worked. Now, you know, they're going to get their masters. I was in there with a colonel who was active duty still, like a colonel who had command at the time from the Marine Corps.
That's weird. That's crazy.
Yeah, a good dude. But that's how the program is, right? So there's all of these different people, and then you basically have a specific curriculum that you don't focus as much on the leadership aspects of an MBA program, right? Because they are looking at the type of people that go through, and they're basically identifying, like, you have leadership experience, so we're teaching you the business skills.
Yeah.
Right? So there is some leadership stuff, but it's mainly focused on a core business curriculum. You know, like finance, accounting, you know, operations, all of those things to show you how the business world works, right? So you go through that. It's 2 semesters, and it was great up until COVID happened because we go up there twice a month on Friday and Saturday. So it was all day Friday. Most of the people who didn't live in LA would stay the night, and then all day Saturday, and then everybody would usually go home on Saturday evening, or if there's a football game, we'd go to the football game. So you got like a decent amount of the college experience with it still being an executive program.
Yeah.
So
and networking with people that are probably going to move into powerful positions.
Exactly. So that was the other thing I was going to touch on, is that the networking aspect of it is you're given access to the USC network, right? Which is super powerful, like in Southern California specifically.
Yeah.
But all over the country, there's people and the world who, like, the USC network's just very, very powerful to be able to get you, access to not necessarily a job, but other people who can help you get placed into a good position.
Yeah.
So
that's like a thing I've told people a lot about on the podcast. It's like, dude, even if you're not a people person, you need to build your network. Yeah. Like, I started a LinkedIn years ago, like while I was I was a sergeant, I think, while I was still in the Marine Corps. But I was like, this would probably be a good thing. And when I started meeting civilian contractors, I'd add them. And that's on the military side. But obviously having that already built and like professionally ready to go, like it looks good, transferring over to somewhere like USC, and then you start, continuing to network, like continuing to build that. There's no bad that can come from that.
No, and it's all your, like, every job that I have got has been through my network, right? And a lot of things, like, I've had some stuff that's fallen through, but it's from people that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, there's one guy who I was loosely friends with who was a Huey pilot in another squadron, and we went through, like, I think we went through WTI, or we were on a debt somewhere for, like, 3 or 4 months. And he ended up hooking me up with, like, access to people who I would have never had before. Like, talking about access to people who work at Apple, company Viasat in Carlsbad. Like,
which is getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, like all kinds of, like, obviously Apple's Apple, but there are other companies that are growing. A couple startups down here, like guys that I would have never talked to them and, like, been offered positions or come close to being offered positions had I not had that network in place. Right?
Yeah.
And so,
So USC is great for that.
Exactly.
Can anybody apply to that program? Like, what's the requirements? You obviously have to have a bachelor's degree.
Yeah, you have to have a bachelor's degree. I want to say there's a minimum GPA, which I didn't meet. Thank God I had a great military career because I barely graduated college. But
that's funny.
So, but they basically, like, there's this. It's just like applying to any other program, right? And I forget what the minimum service time is, but if you did a full contract, you meet
the requirements.
Yeah, like there were some guys in there who they did like a 4-year reserve contract, and they went to go be. There's a lot of cops, so people like that also go into the program, because I didn't know this to be higher up in police departments now. I think to make captain, you have to have a master's degree.
Really?
Which was like.
I guess that kind of makes sense.
It makes sense, but it's just one of those things that I never.
I think people assume cops are idiots and they don't have requirements. And there's probably areas of the country that is true, but here in California specifically, I know they're really strict, and it's actually really hard to become a police officer.
Yeah, you've got to be older, and I think most of the time you have to have a college degree.
If so, it's like an associate's, but I think their training program is like 6 months long though.
Yeah.
And the background check is equivalent to like me applying for a TS security clearance in the military. Yeah. Like they literally go back to your childhood and talk to your neighbors and shit.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But look at the focus on cops right now. Yeah. At least they can come back and say this is what we do to screen people.
Well, it's been like that in California for a long time too.
Yeah.
Right?
I think California is basically the national standard.
Yeah.
From what I've been told. I don't know. There might be other police officers out there that can tell me different, but so anyway, at USC though, like what are these classes that you're doing? You said you had to go twice a month, Friday and Saturday?
Yeah. So you're doing basic stuff like accounting, finance. There was some like management theory and principles classes. Mm-hmm. You have an operations class, which is where I was exposed to like data, how you would use data to make decisions, stuff like that, because that's what my undergraduate degree was in. So getting a good refresh on that was nice.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else, but it's basically like a standard MBA curriculum, right? So if you think about it, an MBA or an MBV in this case is not necessarily for somebody who comes from the business world. Mm-hmm. It's for somebody who is like an engineer that wants to go into management. right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting a broad view of everything that you would do in a business setting, right?
That
so
way you have a basic understanding of your different departments.
Yes. So you're not doing accounting to be an accountant. You're doing accounting to be able to read accounting reports and not look like an idiot.
Yeah.
So, and stuff like that, right? And like finance, being able to understand like how companies are valuated, how, how different stocks and bonds and all that stuff works together for financing. So you can understand those decisions when you're managing a team or you need to finance something.
Did you use your GI Bill for this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I joined after college, so I didn't use my GI Bill at all. So I've still got like 2 years left on that thing.
That's legit. Yeah, I think I'm starting this week, actually. My semester starts this next week. And I have 17 months left.
Really?
Yeah. But that's because I did a lot of classes while I was on ship. Like the second on RMU, I was like, as soon as I decided to get out, I was like, all right, I'm maximizing the classes. So I did 30 something credits in a year, while being active duty.
Which shows how well that we were utilized, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I did maybe it was a year and a half. It might have been over. Anyway, I did a lot of college there. And then since I've been out, I started with 4 classes at Miracosta Community College. I was like, all right, I'm going to ease into this. So I did 4 classes. I'm like, this is not bad. So I added 5. Then I did 6, and I'm like, all right, fuck that. Now I'm back down to 5. But maximizing the amount of classes I'm doing has maximized the amount of GI Bill I have left. So I should have enough to, if I wanted to apply to a program like that, or something else later on, I can do that.
17 months, that could get you through a whole 2-year master's program.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. And I'll have my voc rehab also.
Yeah, because the semesters are about 5 months long. So yeah, you'd be able to go 2 more years.
Yeah, it's cool.
That's legit.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of guys use the GI Bill just to make money, man. They'll sign up for these like diploma mill colleges, and just they're just doing it to get the extra BAH money. But it's like, for me, I'm like, if you're using it, you go use it. Like, do it for real. Like, get something out of it. Like, don't waste it. That's an opportunity that so many people would like kill to have. Free college at anywhere you want to go. Yep. As long as you can get in. And so for me, it's like, dude, I can't waste this. So I've been trying to take you can see some of my textbooks are up there, like Europe. That was my modern Europe course, talking about Napoleon all up till now. So that was interesting. It's good stuff. But it's important, man.
That is one thing with the MBV program is the curriculum is set, so there's no electives.
Yeah.
Right. So
there's no bullshit. It's trimmed down.
You just go and they split the class. We had a 90-ish, and it just got split in 2 parts. And in the morning you would do accounting, and then somebody else would be doing management, and then you would switch professors. So there's no electives at all.
How do you feel about the course now? Like, totally worth it?
Yeah.
Like, what was the most beneficial thing? What was the least beneficial thing?
The most beneficial thing by far was the network. And I knew that going into it. And granted, we were in an exceptional circumstance. I was just getting my feet wet into the banking world when COVID hit, because that was somewhere that I really wanted to go. And then everything, like I said, everything just kind of poof went away, So, but I made a lot of good contacts with that if I ever want to re-pursue that. And I'm working for a financial company right now. So still going down that path, but by far the network. So
what was your least beneficial thing?
That's a good question. I'm trying to answer this.
Just because it's least beneficial doesn't mean it's not beneficial. It's still a good thing.
Yeah.
And it would probably vary per person.
Yeah, there was just, I would say some of the coursework, it wasn't that it was bad. It was just, I've taken accounting before, right? So that was just, it was more or less annoying for me to go through an accounting class, right? Because
which for me would be good.
Right. So there was a lot of my friends in the course, they were like, what are you saying? This is how do you understand this stuff? And I was like, because I did it 10 years ago, and I had to take 5 classes in accounting to graduate with my business.
And math doesn't change.
Right. Exactly. So I would say that that's probably the least beneficial thing.
Yeah, but that's based on the person. Yeah,
exactly,
for sure.
Exactly right. And there wasn't anything where I was like, oh my God, this is awful.
Yeah,
right, related to the course. It was
you just enjoyed all of it.
Yeah, it was good. And I mean, you're generally, I imagine that the cohort that's going through right now, you know the type of people that you're going to get, right? It's veterans. And so if you've been a veteran, you know the slice of people that are going to be there. Like, you're going to find the people that you get along with best.
Yeah.
And like
from all branches too.
Yeah. Like I have 2 groups of about 5 or 6 people that I'm just like really solid friends with.
That's cool.
So like one of them we get together about once a month. Well, we used to get together once a month. The holidays kind of threw that off. And then, I mean, I golf with the other guys probably once every 6 weeks.
That probably helped your transition out too, right? Like being in a group of like veterans, but you're not doing military stuff. You're doing like civilian, like regular shit. Kind of ease you back into the civilian world.
Yeah, no, it was good because just going straight into the business world, because I basically got out, did the reserves, and I did the reserves. I treated it as a full-time job because I was looking for something
a full-time
else,
job.
right?
Yeah.
So I basically stopped doing the reserves the week after I started at PayPal. So it was like jumping directly into it. So this was a good kind of reset.
That had to have been weird.
It was so weird. So
did you feel like awkward, like even talking about stuff, like anything?
Yeah. I mean,
I always feel awkward around people.
It was so funny because, like, you know how I am. I'm just kind of like, for the most part, I'm a generally like relaxed guy. There's some things that'll set me off, but it was funny getting to PayPal the first time because everybody was like, "You were not what we were expecting." When they said we were getting a veteran, I was like, "What were you expecting then?"
Yeah,
and it's weird that
they're expecting the stigma dude to walk in.
Exactly, right? And so that's what it makes you think about that every single time that you meet somebody else. I mean, I'm moved past that. Like, eons ago.
Yeah.
But the first 5 or 6 weeks that I was at work, it was different. It was weird being in a meeting and people just like rolling in 5 minutes late.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
going to school was weird like that, seeing that. I'm like, man, these kids are fucking disrespectful as shit.
Yeah. I'm like, what's your fucking problem, man? Like, the meeting started 5 minutes ago. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I was just getting a coffee. And I was like,
I had a girl answer her phone in class. I'm like, this is blowing my mind. Could you imagine a Marine answering his phone in one of his classes?
Oh man. No.
No, no. Like, that was something you would never do. Yeah. It is weird being around civilians though, because there is a stigma, and I hate it. I hate the stigma. Like, everyone thinks that like every veteran is this like war-torn fucking, on the edge kind of person until they meet them.
Yeah.
That's because the average person's exposure to veterans is nil. They don't have exposure. They see what's on the movies and what makes movies. The most like crazy shit.
The ridiculous.
Yeah. So it's like
5% crazy.
Yeah, their perspective of who we are and what we actually do. I remember this girl that was on the newspaper at Miracosta. We worked together. She's like, dude, you're like one of the most relaxed people I've ever met. Because I'm just like, whatever. Like, this doesn't bother me. Like, cool. I'm like, dude, once you've seen some really shitty stuff, like once you've been to some shitty places, you really appreciate the stuff around you.
Yeah.
Like the flushing my own toilet, turning my electricity on, having a meal anytime. I could call fucking, I could get on my phone right now and have food delivered at any time. I've starved like in singing and shit, like wanted food, and stuff like that. So everything else, I'm just like, whatever, the only time she ever saw me get worked up, I think, was we were going around asking people if they had ever had any near-death experiences for a like blurb in the paper. And this dude, we went up and asked this girl, like, hey, excuse me, have you ever had a near-death experience? Would you like to talk about it for the newspaper? And she's like, no. And this guy was like next to me. He goes, excuse me, you should say trigger warning before you ask a question like that. And I turned and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? And he's like, yeah, that right there could have brought, whatever, kind of all these issues to her. And I'm like, what would me say trigger warning before I ask the exact same question? How is that going to change anything? I'm like, dude. So I started kind of arguing with this dude back and forth. Like, dude, we're the newspaper. You can't tell us who to ask and what to ask. Like, we're on public property. It was one of those things. But I'm like, I hope you're not the average person. This is like one of my, first couple months of being out of the Marine Corps and being in school. And I'm like, God, I really hope I run into fewer people like you.
I know. Yeah. There's people like that always have to throw in their 2 cents, which I'm just over. But
it's like, dude, quit looking to be like offended by something. Quit looking for it.
Quit trying to be the savior for other people all the time.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, White Knight. I appreciate you swooping in to save the day. However, nobody cares. But yeah, man, the stigma is bad. I don't like it, but it is what it is.
Yeah. And I think it's getting better, right? So like in the department that I'm at now, there's me and one of my other buddies who I went to college with, but we're definitely like, you would not know that either of us was in the military unless somebody told you.
Yeah.
Right? So the stigma is like, we're working to get better, and I think it's getting a lot better. Right?
Yeah, I think, when people, again, it's exposure. People just don't have exposure with veterans, and the shit they see is the worst. They see some on the news, oh, hey, this veteran took his family hostage and did this.
Right.
Let's be honest, the military is a reflection of our society. There's crazy people. This zero defect mentality that we have for people just needs to go away. There's doctors that are rapists. There are teachers that are rapists. There are, there's bad people in every job. But the military, obviously everyone's like, well, you're trained to kill people. So there's that stigma. When they don't realize there's like so many people that are definitely not trained to kill people.
Yeah.
Exactly. On paper, they're trained to kill people. But I think a lot of the photos coming out of Washington, D.C. with the National Guard there and stuff has shown that all these people aren't.
Did you see the one with the kid with his rifle put together upside down?
Yeah, it was a female. She had her optic on the bottom. Yeah. Underneath, I think, a grenade launcher or something like that.
Yeah.
I
saw that and I was like, still got it.
Yeah, like, God, man, you're just making us look bad on the world stage now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think the perception has gotten a lot better because it's 2021 now, right? So you've had veterans like yourself, right? So when did you join? Like 07?
06.
Yeah. Right. So, and then you served until 18.
18.
Right.
Yep.
So now you're out into the workforce or out into like the educational community, right?
Yeah.
So you're in the world. So there's a lot more people like you that have been doing that over such a long period of time, right?
Yeah.
Since like 04 to 05 when we've been
basically the last 20 years, right? Yeah.
So there's a lot more exposure to veterans like that. And I think that's good because you can see that they're more than just crazy people that they were portrayed at back in like 08 and 09. You're getting a lot more normal people.
There's definitely a lot of crazy ones out there though.
Oh yeah. There's crazy ones out there, but I mean, we could walk outside and go find 10 crazy people probably in 15 minutes.
Yeah, 100%. So, people that follow my photography Instagram the last few days know that's the truth. It's you're right. The population of people coming back and like going back out and just being normal citizens again is definitely gaining. And that was kind of the reason I started this whole podcast was because there's so many dudes. Like now you know, some new person shows up to PayPal, walks down the hall by you. They're not going to think, oh, this dude went to Afghanistan as a Cobra pilot.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you told someone that, they're probably like, what?
I know.
Like, what?
Yeah.
Do you even talk about it or do people even ask?
No, I do very, very vividly remember one time where like nobody asks you because the average person doesn't care.
Yeah.
Right.
Which
of all, they don't care.
A lot of people need to get that in their head before they get out. Nobody cares.
That's what you need to like. Nobody gives a shit that you were at JTAC. Right.
Yeah. They don't even know what that means.
Yeah. I mean, I care, but whatever. But I remember I'm sitting waiting for a meeting to start, and one of the women that I worked with, Ash, she was like, "Have you ever like deployed?" And I was like, "Yeah." She goes like, "Where?" I was like, I went to Afghanistan, and then we were on a boat. We went like all over the world, and she was like, "Oh, well, did anything ever like go wrong?" And I was like, "How do you want me to answer this question?" And she was just like,
"I'd be like, what are you looking for here?"
Yeah, and she was like, "Yeah, I don't know if I want to know the answer to that." And I was like, "You probably don't." So, but I was like, "But yes, I have been overseas." And she was like, "Okay," and then we just never talked about it.
Then they get a flashback of these heroic movies in their own head. They're like, "Man, he's probably a Medal of Honor recipient. I just don't know it."
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy though, man. But I think like that's cool that people ask. And I think it's cool that you even talk about it. I'm the same. I mean, I obviously have a fucking podcast, but even before the podcast, like I always just talked about it. Cause I'm like, dude, why not? Like, why not? Yeah. I mean, if we as the veterans aren't willing to talk about what we did, then who's gonna tell these stories? Who's gonna inform the public? You know what I'm saying? Like, instead you're gonna have journalists that come over for 2 weeks, don't do anything but take a few photos, come back, and now they are war correspondents and they're gonna tell the world what's going on over there. When it's like, that's not. Right. They don't understand what it's like to live in another country or live on ship, not even a war zone, but like go to these different countries.
Yeah.
I shared a meme. Someone made a meme. I don't know where it came from, but I put it on my Instagram, the J Creamer Graphics one, about, it was like a photo. It was like moms in the evening praying for their son's safety and stuff and it was like their son passed out at 4 a.m. on a street in Japan.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, that's, I don't know. The military, the Marine Corps specifically, because that's all I know, was a good time.
Yeah. I mean, the Afghanistan deployments were, you knew what you were getting into, right?
Yeah. There was always that, oh shit, here we go, like when you leave.
And so you'd always like, you knew what you were getting into. Like if you were standing strip alert, in my case, for a day, like you knew that you were going to get called out to do medevac escort, or you were going to have to go out and shoot, right? You knew there was probably a 75% chance that one of those two things were going to happen, right? The boat was wild.
Yeah.
Because
it was on the fly.
Yeah. Everything was, oh my God, the world's ending. We got to go do this. And then it would just stop every 45 days and you would just go rage in some random foreign country for
just let it all out
72 to 96 hours. And then you would get back on the boat,
back to prison,
and do nothing but lift weights for 2 hours a day. And then like sit around and wait for the next thing that's going to happen. And then be like, all right, and we're done here. So we're going to go to Dubai. And you're like, I'm going to go to like the 4th richest city in the world now and party. And we were just hanging out off the coast of Africa doing whatever.
I've been saving all this money so now I can get a nice hotel and do it right. Man, that's the shit I miss. But I don't know if it's worth being on ship for that long.
No.
That
one period where we were on the boat for like 61 days or whatever it was, when we got the beers on the in the hangar deck. Were you there for that?
I wasn't there for that. Where was I at?
You might have been in Djibouti.
I missed the one time that they have beer on the ship.
You were there for that.
Dude, I don't remember. Oh, I was there.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that. I don't even think I got a beer.
Yeah, because I remember sitting there because we were supposed to go to like Bahrain or somewhere just to get off the boat.
Yeah.
And they canceled it because we had something going on that we had to stay down there for another 2 weeks. And I remember morale went like, just.
I might have actually been off the ship in Kuwait at the time.
Yeah.
Doing the washdown or something like that. Like getting ready for the washdown.
Yeah.
I don't know. Who knows? Who knows, man? What was your favorite country?
I would say Hong Kong.
Dude, Hong Kong is out of control.
It's even split between Hong Kong and Singapore.
That's what I always tell people.
I love Southeast Asia.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, you went back on your own after.
Yeah, we went to Vietnam and Cambodia. Like I picked up my DD-214, and then 3 days later we were in Hanoi.
How was that, dude? I've always wanted to go to Vietnam. We were supposed to go to Vietnam. That's what it was.
We're supposed to go to.
They said the ship.
By Da Nang or
the ship was
like
too
that.
big.
Yeah.
You were like, oh, too buku. Can't pull in the port. Too buku.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah, dude. Oh, how was Vietnam? Was that cool?
It was awesome.
How long were you there for?
We were in Vietnam for like 10 or 11 days, and then we were in Cambodia for 4, and then we went to Kuala Lumpur for like a day.
Kuala Lumpur is cool.
Yeah, we went to Kuala
Yeah, we
Lumpur.
went there together, yeah.
That's why I went back there, just because it's easier to fly out of there than it is out of Cambodia. So we flew from Cambodia to Kuala Lumpur to like 24 hours there, and then flew home.
That was right after you got out, huh? You said you picked up your DD-14 and did that?
I picked up my DD-214, and I checked into my reserve unit, and then I like went to the airport the next morning.
That's awesome.
So it was pretty sick.
Did you go a lot? Did you see like the battlefields and stuff in Vietnam?
We saw a couple. We went to, we saw the Cu Chi tunnels, which are outside of Saigon, which is where, it's not where the Marines were fighting. It was where the Army was doing a lot of stuff.
Okay.
But it was pretty sick. They had all the tunnels They had a couple of them that you could like go in and see them. Crazy, man. Just
could you imagine that some of those dudes lived in those all the time?
I get claustrophobic, and I was just like sitting there like looking at this thing, and I was like, nope, no way that I could do this. But I'm also like twice the size of a Vietnamese person.
Yeah.
But
that's crazy.
It's an interesting country, right?
How are they towards Americans? They're pretty cool, right? They like Americans, don't they?
That's why I liked it so much, was because they loved Americans, because all like Americans haven't blown up the tourism industry there. So it's the only place in the entire world that I've ever been where like I walked into a coffee shop or something, and the owner, who didn't speak any English, walks up and like obviously saw me and my wife were Americans, and like moved people out of the way and was like, sit down here, and was going out of his way to serve us.
Really?
Yeah, because they deal with a lot of Russian and Chinese tourists who are like notoriously rude.
Oh, really?
So us coming in there, they're like, oh, these Americans are here. And I was like, this is strange. I remember like going to places in France 20 years ago with my high school group, and they were like, you're not allowed in here because you guys are all dicks.
Really?
And I was like, okay. So
I've heard places like that in Japan. There's places like that in Japan.
I can see it in Japan, especially on Oki.
Yeah, with the base being there.
Yeah. But it was cool, man, because it's not blown up. There's tourism there, but it's not wild yet.
Yeah,
you can still walk into a coffee shop in Hanoi that's been there for 110, 115 years, right? It's really, really...
Isn't it crazy how we're just like, we were at war, 30, 40, what, more than 30 years ago, fucking 60, 50 years ago?
Yeah.
50 years ago now, but they're like, hey, what up? Here, let me make a seat for you.
I mean, like, Saigon is... So Hanoi is definitely... You can see a difference in the two countries between, like, communism and capitalism, where it...
Oh, if you go to, like, North Vietnam?
Try to do all that, right? So, like, Hanoi was definitely more, like, government-oriented, and you could tell that it was... Because it is a communist country.
It's got that vibe.
Right, you know what I mean? You go down to Saigon, and, like, we were staying in a 40-story JW Marriott, where if I put you there and I put you in Hong Kong, you would not be able to, you wouldn't know that you were in a communist country.
Yeah, yeah.
In comparison to like Hong Kong. Well, that's a whole other story, but you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
It was pretty cool. And I got to see Da Nang, where the Marines landed, and they have the old airport there. They just built a new one, but the old airport was the original one that the Marines built back in like, whatever it was, 65 or 66.
Yeah, well,
so you can see like all the old hangars.
That might have been 64.
Yeah.
I don't know when we started messing around over there.
Yeah. But it was kind of neat to see like all the old Quonset huts and stuff like that, because they had like that very distinct yellow and green color from like Vietnam.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that's pretty sweet. That's where like, the Hueys for the 1st Cavalry Division or whatever it was were stationed. You're like, yeah, that's pretty neat. And then like the guys would go around and they could like point out all of the different hills and stuff where the battles were fought. It was just,
man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Could you imagine fighting there, like going and seeing the country?
Dude, absolutely not. Like we used to talk about this when we were in Malaysia, right? Like fighting in the jungle.
Those jungles, you can't see shit.
Yeah. Fighting in the desert is hard enough, right? But you get people that can look literally down from 30,000 feet and tell you everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
You can talk to people on the radio all the time. Like I couldn't even imagine
the issues of fighting through the jungle.
Doing like a company movement through the jungle. Like, no fucking thank you.
Yeah.
Like, and then on top of it, you've got to throw it. You don't just have to worry about being dehydrated like you have to in the desert, right?
Yeah.
Now you got to worry about all of the other shit that kills people, like disease, and like your feet just getting completely screwed up from having to like walk through swamps, and then the animals that are out there, like it's just
animals, bugs, weather, all of it.
Everything wants to kill you.
Yeah.
So I could not imagine fighting there. Like fighting in the jungle. Like thank God the stuff that we did was mostly in the desert.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. There was some like weird tree lines and stuff like that, and like some lush areas. I'm sure you saw a lot of different things, flying around in Afghanistan, but yeah, for sure. Definitely mostly way in the open. Yeah. I mean, you'd be doing call for fire by sound and stuff out there.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think about. Like There's something that way. Let's shoot, see what happens. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and even trying to figure out where you are.
Yeah.
Because now your GPS is gone. So you're talking about like really being able to read contour lines on a map, you know, like something that people like. I feel like that's probably a vanishing skill. I don't know. It might be a old man yells a cloud moment where like
I don't think
these kids don't know how to do anything.
I don't think the average person can read a map at all, let alone the contour lines specifically.
Yeah.
That's a thing we take for granted for sure.
But yeah, I could not even imagine. Just moving like a click through the jungle would probably take a platoon or a company like hours.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, it would be horrible.
Yeah.
That would not be good.
And you're talking about like losing contact with units on the flanks, stuff like that, like just nuts. But
yeah, I would not want to fight in Vietnam or any of those other countries. I'm glad we go there to hang out now.
Great place to visit, though.
Yeah. Dude, too bad Hong Kong's fucking taken over. I don't think we could ever go back to Hong Kong.
I know.
Or if you do, I don't think it'd be the same. And not even like the party area in like Haiphong, you know, but going down to what's the other place right across the river where all the shopping and stuff is?
Oh, Kowloon.
Kowloon.
Yeah.
The Kowloon district. That's where I stayed at when I was there the last time I stayed. Mm-hmm. Stayed the night there. Kowloon, man. What a cool place. Hong Kong is a great place. I was telling somebody the other day how we would it wasn't on our deployment, it was on the one before that. We went to this like really nice restaurant there and dudes were eating duck tongues. Yeah. And I'm like, nope. Like they're like, well, we're gonna try it, and they got a bowl and they're all like, oh. Yeah. And you see them like eating it and they're like, you wouldn't think that it would be cold. Like it just came out of a refrigerator. And I'm like, oh. And one guy's over there like and there's like a bone in it or something. The Chinese lady comes running over like, no, don't eat the bone. Yeah. And he's like, I already did. Like, I don't know. I'm like, no way, man. These dudes are eating duck tongues and jellyfish.
Yeah.
And
did
I'm
you
just
go
not
with us
with
to that brunch?
In Bahrain?
No, the Bahrain one. I know you were there.
Yeah. Brunch in Bahrain is everything that people have said it was.
Yeah, that was awesome. I do remember like, oh, this food's really good. And then it was like at 1:30, somebody pressed the button and like the tables went into the ground and it turned into like a giant dance party.
It was just a party.
Yeah.
Man, brunch in Bahrain.
Yeah, that was an exciting time.
I've had people tell me about brunch in Bahrain for years, and I'm like, it can't be that great. Yeah. It can't be. And what we pay, like $50?
It was something like that.
It's like $50, but it's all you can eat, all you can drink for 3 hours.
4 hours.
And it's like all you can drink drinks that are basically Long Island's, you know, or versions of that.
Yeah.
So everybody's smashed, like, and the food is all like primo.
Well, you get all the expats come out on Friday, so nobody will work on Friday there. You get all like the people teaching English, so you get like the Aussies and the Brits.
Are there a lot of expats in Bahrain?
Not a lot, but like the ones that were there would go out at that time, right? So
you'd see the chicks, you're like, that's definitely a Russian prostitute.
Oh,
like, that chick is professional for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that was a general rule is you could walk into any bar there and you're like, all these chicks are pros.
Yeah.
So
really? Well, you were there for a while, right? Didn't you spend a couple weeks there?
We were there for like 7 days. You were there with us. But you had to keep going back and forth to the boat.
I don't remember.
Yeah. We rigged up our duty schedule where we didn't have to go back and forth to the boat. So, because that's one of the great things about making the duty schedule is we had the first
choose your own
shift
destiny,
and we had the last shift, and then we had like the entire 5.5 or 6 days there. So like,
yeah, you definitely don't want a duty in the middle of a port call.
No,
you definitely got to volunteer for.
We would always make sure that never happened.
The first one's probably the best one to have.
Yes,
because everyone's leaving anyway. So getting off the ship, anyone that's ever gotten off a ship during a port call knows that is just a mess. Yeah. Especially if you're at a place like Hong Kong where the ship is out in the bay and they have the Liberty boats. Then you got to wait hours.
I could not even imagine being like a lance corporal who's 20 years old coming back to the ship at like 2 o'clock and trying to get on that fucking boat. Oh my God.
The way it rocks and shit.
Oh, dude, like no way.
And you have to like take that leap from the boat to the little floating pier next to the ship or whatever they called that.
Because I remember
somebody had to have fallen in at least once or twice.
Oh yeah. I remember I think there was a kid that lost some teeth because he fell.
Oh shit.
But I remember the first night in Bahrain I actually had it was the second day. I had the morning duty shift. So we landed, got off at like, I don't know, 5 o'clock, right? And they launch everybody, like junior all the way to senior.
Yeah.
And we were all sitting in my stateroom watching the closed caption or what is it called? Closed circuit TV.
Yeah.
Of the main ramp where you get off.
Yeah, the well deck.
And I remember somebody was like, you've never watched this before? I was like, no. He was like, oh, dude, it's awesome because you can drink here when you're 18. So he's like, all the juniors get off and they won't even be through like the junior officers, and there'll be kids getting like dragged back who are just dead.
Yeah.
And so like we're watching these kids, and I remember there's one kid, he's got his arms around his two buddies and his feet are just like being
drugged. Yeah.
And he was just absolutely gone. And by the time you get down, you're just watching these kids go through the well deck and get taken into their
I saw that when we did. I think it was was it Bahrain? We had beers on the pier. You could stay on the pier and smoke beer, or you could have beer and smoke hookahs. They had like hookah guys out there, and it was literally we were getting off the ship for the first time, and they were dragging a dude back, and I'm like, Jesus, dude, it's been like 2.5 hours. It hasn't even like you've been off this ship at most for 2 hours, and you're already so hammered they're dragging you back. Like that's crazy, man. Yeah. What a great time. For an 18 to 22-year-old, that's got to be – there's no way you can replicate that kind of life experience. Like college has nothing on something like that.
Absolutely not. That was one of the things we used to talk about in coming back from Afghanistan. Me and my buddy was nobody will ever be able to replicate that sense of euphoria of like the first 4 or 5 days of when you're home. Yeah. Right? It's just a feeling that nobody – who hasn't done it will never understand, where you just, like you were talking about earlier, where you just appreciate everything. You're like, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to Starbucks. Yeah. You're like, this is going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
So
it's so crazy. It makes you appreciate shit for sure. 100%. It's like one of those things where, like, would you recommend your own children to join the military?
I don't know, man.
See, that's the thing. It's like we talk about it in such grandeur and in such positive ways, but at the same time, you have that question in your mind.
Yeah, well, it's another thing you used to talk about with one of my roommates was how the Marine Corps was the best decision I ever made, but getting out of the Marine Corps was the second best decision I ever made.
Yeah.
Right. So it's experiences that you are never going to be able to replicate. Like my view on life was shaped by like the experiences that I have, right? So like my views on work, like personal life, what the government should be able to do, all of that stuff was shaped by the things that we did in the military.
Yeah.
Right? But it's also an experience there were things that I would never want my kids to have to deal with.
For sure.
So I'm trying to set them up the best way possible to never have to do it. Like if they want to do it, like go for it. But I would rather you went to college and then started your own business, or in the summers from college you went and interned at Goldman Sachs instead of going to OCS like I did.
I think if my kid wanted to join, I would say, look, I want you. That's fine if you want to do it, but I want you to go and get at least an associate's degree. Get 2 years of college. Enjoy yourself enjoy that youth, that 18 to 20, because honestly, being under 21 in the military sucks. You're watching everybody else get hammered and have a good time, and you can't do anything. And if you do, then you're in trouble. See, I joined when I was 22, so it was different. I'd already done all the partying and stuff and hung out at home and around Purdue University at the time. But I think I would tell them to do that just because I think there's some life experience that makes you a better Marine. Of like living on your own, having to work, understanding what the real world is kind of like outside of your parents' house.
Yeah.
Before you go there to somewhere like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, agreed. And like, this probably isn't going to be the case, but it's the same concept where if I ever start a business, I wouldn't want my kid to either graduate high school or college or whatever and start working directly for the family business. I would want them to go somewhere else.
Really?
And
do something else.
It's about outside experience. And then if they want to come back and do it, even if it's only 2 years like you're talking about, right? It's not, you get a different perspective on things.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you're really an idiot when you're 18.
Yeah.
Yeah, that.
Oh, yeah.
I moved out of my mom's house when I was in high school still, my senior year. I was 18. I was one of those guys that was like the early birthday.
Yeah.
And so I was 18 and we moved out and we just had the craziest time. We just imagine a bunch of 18 to 20-year-olds, 4 of us, living in a house together and just partying constantly. I had like one of the dudes was a musician, one of the other dudes just like a weird dude, we hung out with and that experience of like having to pay my own bills, having to deal with like the cops when they came, I got arrested, shit like that. Like that's obviously not a good thing. I wouldn't want my kid to get arrested or anything.
Yeah.
But that's a life experience where I'm like, man, okay, I understand the consequences of my actions because I felt them, I felt the consequences.
Yeah. And I mean, college is a whole other thing because I did all my VA stuff and finally get that sorted. Now my kids can go to school for free.
Yeah. Any state school in California, right?
And that's huge.
That is huge.
So, because who knows, college might be like $6 million by the time my kids get to that age, but it's good to have life experience, I think. What's your take on
Elon Musk saying that there's too many MBAs out there and that college is over? A lot of people are saying college is kind of overhyped, especially in 2021 where we all have access to basically every kind of information we'd ever want.
Right. I don't want to say it's overhyped. I think it's overpriced.
It is for sure overpriced.
Because of what you just said, you have access to everything, right? So when I remember I had to take an art history class in 2003 and I fucking hated it.
Yeah.
And it did absolutely nothing for me except drag my GPA down because there was an attendance requirement. And I would take the test and I would get hundreds on them. And I would go up to the guy and be like, I'm getting 100 on your tests. Why do I have a C in your class? He's like, oh, well, you don't come. And I was like, well, then maybe you should make it so I have to come learn something. I mean, I'm paying you for this course. I have to pay you $3,000 and I'm getting 100% on all the exams.
And not even coming.
Why am I getting a C and I don't even have to go to this course?
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there like, again, going back to not having any life experience, I'm just some shithead 18-year-old like arguing against this guy's life work with him. So I'm not going to win.
Yeah.
But it's just like that's the kind of stuff that I think Elon Musk is referring to, right? But going to college at the same time gives you all of these life experiences.
Yeah.
And so if you could have a system where you don't have to pay, I mean, I don't even know what it costs to go to school anymore. I know that like an MBA at USC is about $50,000 a semester.
Oh, wow. Really?
Something around like those lines is.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense though. Cause I think that's what their undergrad costs too.
It's a private school. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, is that worth it for you to spend $400,000 for a 4-year education? Like, I mean, how long is it going to take for you to pay that off if you don't get scholarships or like your parents aren't in a well enough off position?
Yeah.
So where now you could go online and you could teach yourself any programming language.
Yeah.
Go work for some company, like go get a certification online with a high school degree, and you're starting to see companies like drop their college requirement. Right?
Yeah.
So
they put in a college requirement or equal work experience.
Yes. And so like if you get an entry level position, right, just being a developer and you're not an asshole and you want to lead a team, you can do that in like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Right. You don't need that necessarily like that degree to do that. Like, what is that actually going to teach you? It's all about life experience.
Yeah. It depends on the job for sure.
So I wish that those things would kind of meet in the middle, because I feel like school has become a giant business.
Oh, for sure.
Just a giant, like you're just churning stuff out, and it's become so expensive because.
And COVID has made it like way more obvious that we're overpaying for shit.
Yes. And there's something that needs to be done there. And I don't know what the answer is. I'm obviously not smart enough to figure this stuff out, but it's kind of scary when you look at like the education gap is getting worse and worse in the United States, right?
How so?
Because the people that can afford to go to college are the ones that are getting all the good jobs, right? And
yeah.
The people that can't are not necessarily getting the bad jobs, but they're not given that step ahead, right? So you're leaving such a large chunk of society that's not given the ability or the opportunity to succeed.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So
I can see that. That's where the whole free college, argument comes into play.
Right. And I'm not necessarily saying it needs to be free, but like that's something that, everybody needs to take a hard look at and be like, okay, does this tenured professor really deserve, I don't know what they get paid, but like $500,000.
They get paid quite a bit for a tenured professor.
Pulling out of my ass. I have no idea if that's right, but I mean, is that really on par with what he would be making if he was in the working world? And can you justify that? What about the guy who's a professor for 2 years? Like what is, and what about all these other things that you have to pay for? Like, why does it cost so much money? And
yeah, is the juice worth the squeeze?
Right. And it's gone through so many iterations over, since like the 60s when a lot of people could just afford to go to school.
Yeah. I mean, like a semester was like $200 a class or something like that.
Or you could borrow money and pay it off in a reasonable amount of time. So, but going back to my point is.
Well, that comes into play with the borrowing money. Let me real quick people shouldn't be taking out loans to go to USC. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like if you go and know that you're paying $50,000 a semester to go to USC, that's your own fault, man. Pay off your loan. You didn't have to go to USC because if you got into USC, you probably got into a lot of other really good schools that don't cost as much.
And USC is love USC. Right?
Well, yeah,
but it's a private school.
I applied to USC,
so
yeah,
you know what you're getting into.
Yeah,
right. But I understand what you're saying too. But I mean, you should not have to go into debt $300,000 by the time you're 22.
Yeah.
Just to get a job that's going to pay $65,000 coming out of college.
Yeah, you're right. I agree.
And the point that I'm trying to make over the past 5 minutes is, if you keep letting this go, like we're not going to produce the most highly educated people in the world, right? Because you look at a country like China, where the competition there, this is the opposite end of the spectrum, right? The competition there to get into these schools here and in China is so dramatic.
Yeah,
like
it's huge.
Everybody over there wants to be smart and everybody wants to succeed. Whereas like here, people are kind of turned off to it. They're like, why do I need to go to college and spend $300,000? So there's like something needs to happen to like shift the balance over here where education needs to be a priority. Otherwise, like what's going to happen in 30 years when a generation of people who don't have any like specific technical skills or anything like that are the leaders?
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm saying is like, that's the thing that scares me.
I think we should do a better job of like encouraging people in like high school. Like, hey man, are you looking at college? No? Well, let's start looking at technical stuff. And you become a technical person, because people that are in the trades make a ton of money.
Yeah.
Like, let's not, I know guys that are heavy equipment operators, like the crane dudes in the trades. Those dudes make $60+ an hour.
Right.
And that's good fucking money.
It's not only trades like that now. You're talking about like learning programming languages.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. You need to incentivize this stuff for people. And
for sure,
the incentives are not there for somebody to go to college, go into a ton of debt that they're probably not going to be able to pay off for 10 or 20 years.
For sure. There definitely has to be an understanding of technology. Like if you are not actively trying to keep up with technology, then that's kind of your fault when shit goes. Like, I don't want to grow up and be my mom or my grandparents like that were trying to use the internet for the first time or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to be that person. So I try to, before I started this last semester of school, I started watching, because I'm a nerd, I started watching the MIT open courseware videos on YouTube for Python programming.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, because I'm like, everybody keeps talking about Python. I
Yeah.
feel like I should know at least the basics of what it is and stuff. Like, I don't need to be a programmer, but at least understand what people are talking about.
So yes, you just need to be able to participate in the conversation and understand how it can be used.
Exactly,
And
participate in the conversation.
And that goes back to like, that's what an MBA is, right? To be able to understand all of those things so you can make decisions. Being able to understand the technical stuff like that's important. So
yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, it's I don't know. Education is an interesting thing. I'm a journalism and advertising major, neither of which requires a degree for a lot of places.
Yeah.
if you, like you said, with programming, like if you do good work, people are just going to hire you because you do good work. My whole purpose of going to college is, one, I'm a curious person. I think it's I think going to college and taking some of the electives I've always picked electives that I found really interesting. Yeah. Or I tried to at least. But I also wanted to validate to the civilian sector that I'm a normal person. You know, coming out of the Marine Corps after 12 years, there's that stigma. I want to show like, hey, look, he's done something outside of the Marine Corps. Like, look, he went and got a degree, so he's probably good to go. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Which I don't know if I needed that or not, but it can't hurt, right? And in networking, just like you with networking and stuff.
Right. And well, you set yourself up because you go to college for free.
Sure.
You're actually getting paid to go to college.
I am.
So
it's like just over $2,000 a month out here in California or in San Diego. Maybe $2,500.
Yeah. I thought it was close to $3,000.
I don't remember.
At least LA is probably more expensive than San Diego.
Probably, yeah.
So,
but yeah, man, it's and that's when people are talking about they want free college. I'm like, join the military. Yeah. No one says you got to join the Marine Corps and combat arms. You could go be Coast Guard, dude. You could go be a reserve Air Force admin person. Yeah. Which what are you going to do? You're going to be in a corporate environment, basically. Like if you're an Air Force admin person, you're basically working in a corporate environment, right? Yeah. I mean, let's be honest.
If you're there's a lot of things that you're doing even in like the Marine Corps where you're just in a corporate environment.
Yeah, people don't realize that how it mirrors.
Like you remember bringing the S1 out to the ranges?
Yeah.
We'd have to be like extra, what are the guys called that would be RSOs, but you'd have to have an extra person standing behind them to make sure
PSO.
They weren't going to shoot a PSO, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, we wouldn't do any more of the intricate shooting stuff with those guys. Or females too. I remember one time we were out there shooting. We had a ton of rounds, and one of the admin people, like, we had a couple thousand rounds left for the 240 still, and I was like, "Hey, you guys want to shoot? Like, there's rounds left for the 240. You guys want to shoot some more?" And they're like, "Nah, I think we're good, Staff Sergeant." And I'm like, "Well, you can either go shoot the 240 or start police calling brass." And they're like, "We'll go police call." Yeah, and I'm like, "Get the fuck out of here!"
Because I think I was the overall RSO.
Oh, were you out there for that one?
And you were running the range, because I remember sitting on the little PT range table or whatever it was, and I remember something like, "No, we're good." And I was like, "You guys really don't want to go shoot a fucking machine gun?" We're like, "What did you? You
know how much money people would pay to do this?"
Yeah, it was like, in fact, I know people that go to Las Vegas just to shoot shit like this.
And then Damaro hit me up and was like, "Hey, Staff Sergeant, can I shoot it standing? Can I do one?" I'm like, "Yeah, fuck it, go for it, man." These nerds don't want to shoot it, so whatever.
That was that 3-day range that we had where they gave us all that excess ammo, and I remember you woke us all up at like 5 o'clock. You were like, "Everybody get the fuck up. We have like 20,000 rounds that we
had to shoot. We had to finish shooting all those.
Sundown is in 12 hours, and we need to be done." And I was like, "Yeah, this is actually going to take that long."
Yeah, that was a fun time. We had the SOI class coming through while we were setting up the range. They were doing their morning hike. Yeah. And I'm over there like, get up, get the range set up, because we'd been asleep for a few hours because we shot all the way into the dark. That was fun, man. I do miss shooting. Yeah. I miss shooting, like, just in general, you know? Like, right now I feel like I can't go shooting because I'm afraid I'm going to run out of ammo and not be able to replace it. Yeah.
It'd be different if we were in like Arizona or New Mexico or Texas or something like that.
I don't know, man. I think even in those places it's hard to get ammo right now. I think it's a tough spot to find any kind of ammo anywhere, you know?
I don't know. Not even to get it, but like the stuff that we used to do is the fun stuff, like transition drills and having somebody load spent brass in your magazine.
Oh yeah, cause a jam.
That kind of stuff was fun. Like I would like doing that. You can't do that kind of stuff in California.
You can, you actually can, but it's so regulated. It's hard to do, and it's expensive. Yeah, it's like crazy expensive to get ammo out here. It's almost next to impossible, in some places to find it. Yeah. So, and you never know what the hell's going to go on the next couple months. Yeah. I don't think anything crazy would happen. I think they just said they're adding like like 8,000 troops or something to Washington. They're almost to 30,000 troops in Washington. Yeah. And it's like, dude, okay, this is a little overkill. Like, this is a little ridiculous. I think there should be a response, but no one is actually going to go and try to take over the Capitol. I don't think that's a real thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, again, like, I think what happened was a flash mob kind of, it became like a thing and they overwhelmed them, but that was like a one-off thing. I don't think that would, I mean, if do people really think those people that went into the Capitol were trying to take over the country? Like those, I think they were more there for social media clout than anything. But it's cool. Now they get 10 years in prison, federal prison.
I mean, I agree with what you're saying there. I would rather this time they would be prepared for it instead of having like...
Yeah, but 20,000 troops?
Yeah, that's a little bit overkill, I guess.
Have you seen the...
I haven't, to be fair, I haven't really kept up on this stuff since when was it? Last 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, the day of, and then after that, I was just kind of like, I can't watch the media coverage on this.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be what actually happened. It's going to be, distilled 7 or 8 times.
For sure. I think initially it was good coverage. I think people covered it well. I was recording a podcast when everything went down, so I turned on the TV when it was kind of ending, which right there tells you how big of a deal it was. They had it under control within like 3 hours. Like it was completely shut down. People were being arrested. Like people were just milling around. I actually know a girl that was up there just for the rally. But like, it sucks that all those people are getting wrapped into that group, that small group, just like the rioters at the BLM protests. I'm sure the people that organize these protests don't appreciate the small group of rioters that burn down these cities after the protest.
Yeah.
It hurts the message. And it's the same thing. People don't want to hear that it's the same thing, but to me it is. I think it is. But anyway, we don't have to talk about that because I know people don't want to hear about politics and stuff. But yeah, man. So what else is going on? What kind of advice would you give someone that's... I had my buddy on a couple episodes ago, Nate Garnes, who is moving into a corporate accounting position. He's going to go be an accountant, get a CPA and all that stuff, some major company in Texas. And he kind of discussed what he put on his resume and how he worded it. Not specific stuff, but how would you recommend someone setting themselves up for success if they're wanting to work at one of these big tech companies? Let's say someone like me getting out of school here pretty soon and I'm starting to apply at places. What are the best practices that you can recommend?
So, like we talked about before, networking.
Yeah.
Start networking before you get out of the military.
Mm-hmm.
And try and do as much as you can and just meet people from all different areas, right? So, you may think that you want to be an accountant, right? But you could talk to somebody else and maybe you don't understand what an accountant actually does and you really want to get into some specific type of banking or like, mergers and acquisitions, something like that. Maybe that's what you think it is. And you can learn all those things from just networking.
Yeah.
And researching those things, As far as like resume building, I would say that that's step 2 after building your network. And you need to focus on leadership things. So nobody's going to give a shit that you were a JTAC-E FAC AI and you've given over 600 X's or whatever. Like nobody cares.
Nobody cares, bro.
Right? So you need to word those things as like, I was the lead standardization officer for a unit and I led the training, over a 1 month period or a 1 year period for 25 people, in order to deploy for whatever reason, right? So focus on like the leadership things. Also put quantifiable stuff down. So a good example for anybody who's been like staff NCO or higher is you're going to be in charge of a CMR at some point. So like list all the stuff out on there, right? Like I was in charge of $4 million worth of equipment, making sure that it all worked, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you could go crazy with it. Stuff like I ran the quality assurance department at my squadron for a while. So like at the end of the day, I was responsible for, 20 helicopters that are $15 million each. So you do the math on that, like you can put quantifiable numbers onto these things, right?
When you put that down, do you feel like you're bullshitting? Does it feel like, because it seems like it's almost like when you're writing your fit rep, when you're doing your whatever OMPF or whatever it's called, where you're supposed to be like building yourself up. But you kind of feel like, for me, I feel like a douchebag when I'm doing that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's like the number one rule of resume writing is to just kind of throw that out the window.
Yeah, throw those feelings out.
Right.
$300 million worth of helicopters.
Exactly. Right. I mean, that number is absolutely preposterous.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day,
it's real.
I mean, it is true. Like, if something goes wrong, they're going to go to the aviation maintenance officer, who's the major department head, and then he's probably going to come down to me. So, I mean, thank God nothing went wrong. But, I mean, you're responsible for all those things. So those are the big three things. I would say networking, focus on leadership, and then put quantifiable stuff onto your resume. So, and like demilitarize it. So have somebody who has zero military experience read it, and then the first time that you do it, they're gonna be like, what the fuck is these three things? Like, what are all of these acronyms? So getting rid of stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
So it takes a lot. I mean, even for my friends I know who are just civilians, writing resumes is very difficult because nobody likes, 95% of the people in the world don't like pumping themselves up to that level that you have to be competitive with your resume.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
Another thing is, a lot of people, this is a personal belief of mine, but a lot of people will tell you to personalize your resume for each specific job.
Yeah, I've heard that from a few people.
And that goes into like the algorithms that your resume gets pumped into a system and it like looks for keywords, right? So you can do that. I chose not to. There were some positions that I really liked where I'd write a cover letter, but I had a resume that was more or less generic, but I had it for different types of positions. I would have a different wording. So I had like 3 versions, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And if there was a job that I really, really wanted, I would put a cover letter together using all of those words instead of putting in my resume.
Okay.
Because I think that you have a better chance of getting a job through your network than you are if I just like cold apply to Apple, right?
Yeah.
Like, I would have never gotten my resume through the Apple system had I not known 3 people there.
Yeah.
And that's how I got all the interviews there. The same thing at PayPal. The same thing at a couple of the other companies I applied for too.
How were the interviews? How was the interview process?
It's just.
Did anybody ask about your military service? Did you ever feel like you had to explain it, or you felt weird explaining it?
Yeah, and I mean, again, you got to focus. You have to prepare for all this stuff. You can't just roll in cold and think you're going to be fine, because you'll find yourself saying the exact same shit that we just talked about, where again, nobody's going to care that you were a FAC AI.
They're like, cool, man, whatever that means.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, it's really sweet. I used to tell other planes to drop bombs on stuff from my helicopter, and they're like, you're interviewing for a management position here.
They're like, are you a war criminal?
They're like, well, not technically, but
ROEs, bro.
So,
oh my gosh,
the interview process is the hardest because networking for most people is just hanging out, you know. And once you get over that like initial, you're like going in and you're basically trying to get pieces of information about what somebody does while making yourself seem interesting.
Yeah.
So it's like going on a date. And once you get good at it after a while, you know, or you get less worse at it. Interviewing, you're probably going to get a lot of questions like, how do you think your past experiences transition directly to this job, right? So that's where you have to focus on a lot of the different leadership things that you've done in the military. You have to be able to provide like quantifiable stories. What is is it abbreviation? It's like STAR: situation, task, action, and result. And that's how you should answer all of those questions. Right? So somebody's like, give me an example of a time where something went sideways. What'd you do to fix it? So you should be able to have 2 or 3 stories cocked and ready just for you to be able to jump right into it, where you're not like, you know, you have that ready to go. And you can hop onto Google and look at like all of these questions. Like 50% of the time, person's going to walk in and be like, so tell me about yourself. Like right there should not be the first time that you've thought about that question.
Yeah.
You should be able to answer that question like immediately. And
that's your 30-second elevator pitch, right?
Exactly. And I'm not saying memorize like a robot exactly what it is. The way that I always did this stuff is I would write bullet points when I would do practice interviews.
Yeah.
So
that's a good way. Yeah.
So you remember like the high level information you want to talk about, but each time you say it, it might be different. So it's just easier to remember stuff like that. Right.
Yeah.
So
do you ever try to like relate with the interviewer? You ever do that? Like where you kind of look around their office like, oh, basketball, huh? I played once.
Every interview that I did was not in somebody's office at big companies.
Oh, really?
It was weird.
It's like in a conference room?
Yeah. And you would be like, I would show up at the front desk and you talk to the receptionist and they would literally like, do you want a coffee or a water? And they would just like put you in a boardroom and you just like, I had one that was 8 hours.
Oh, wow.
There was lunch in the middle of it where like somebody came in, you went on like.
You sat there for 8 hours with the same people just talking?
No, ones and twos would come in and out all day from like the entire department, from like other departments, like the stakeholders you're going to work with.
Yeah.
And that's pretty standard for a lot of tech companies in the Valley. I don't know if it's still going that way, but that's how it was like
a few years ago.
3 years ago when I was doing it. I imagine it's probably still somewhat the same. Now it's just on Zoom. So like I would have
I feel like it'd be easier now to do an interview.
Yeah. I mean, you're sitting like I did all my stuff from my kitchen.
Yeah.
And you would just sit there and they'd be like, "Hey, we need you for 3 hours on Monday."
Do you still throw the suit on and everything?
No. That's another good point. So you have to. I would always ask people at a company. So if I wanted a job somewhere, right, I would network my way into the company. And one of the questions I would always ask is how you dress for work. So like if I would have worn a suit to my PayPal interview, it would have been over.
Really?
Like immediately.
See, people would assume, like people like me would assume the opposite.
Right.
Like they would expect you in a suit.
But you go to, so like I wear jeans and a hooded sweatshirt. Even if I was going into the office, that's what I would wear to work. But if you're going to interview at like JP Morgan or Goldman, you need to wear a suit. Whereas I interviewed at Amgen, which is a biotech company, and like I wore a pair of khakis and like a sweater, like quarter zip,
like business casual stuff.
Yeah. So you got to be able to read the room on that because, again, had I worn a suit there, you would have shown up. You would be like, "Oh shit, nobody has a suit on. I look like an idiot."
Yeah.
So that's a common misconception, and I think it's being.
That is a common misconception, changing. I think.
Yeah, and it's different in every region of the world, right? Like in Southern California, people wear jeans and T-shirts to work. That's the culture, right?
Yeah, and C-suite people.
Yeah, it changes it depending on like if you're in banking or finance or something like. Yeah, you might wear like khakis and a golf shirt or something like that, but very rarely down here are you gonna
suit up every day
to work.
Yeah.
Whereas like a lot of places in New York City, probably going to be wearing a suit.
Probably, yeah.
So you just got to be able to understand that. And that's also important for like a culture fit for a company. Like that can be do you want to wear a suit to work every day? Because the culture of that company is probably a little bit more like uptight or strict. Whereas somewhere where you're going, where you're wearing a jeans and T-shirt to work, there's probably more freedom for you, like to choose your working hours, as long as you're still doing your job, all of that stuff.
Yeah. They're allowing you to kind of work rather than dictating down like everything.
Yeah,
there are less formalities and stuff like that. I think that's what a lot of people are looking for in a job. Something like that, where it's like a laid back persona, or laid back, an environment where, and also people come out of the military like me. I feel like I'd want to work somewhere where like the people enjoy hanging out with each other. Like it's a good, just because like in the military, that's why the military is so great, is because you're with those people all the time and you get to know them so well. And like some of those people just become like the best friends you could have ever had, Yeah. And yeah, so I don't know. Culture is definitely important, I think.
Yeah. And that's it's huge.
Yeah.
So, because everybody's been like, we've both been in commands where we just don't like the people that we work with.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than that.
And I mean, it makes it horrible. Excuse me for a second. I've got to.
No, you're good, man.
Sign something that I forgot to sign.
Work never ends for the corporate guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it'd be interesting to work somewhere like PayPal or something like that. But me, you know, I'm more on the creative side of things. So I think it'd be different than something like what you're doing, like data analysis and things like that, for sure. I think it'd be a cool environment. I don't know. Maybe one day. I don't know if I really want to do anything like that after school. I do want to get into some kind of media organizations and just kind of see how they do it, you know, in the big leagues, I guess. And just so I can better do this podcast. Like right now I'm live streaming, but, you know, we had issues at the beginning, shit like that. You know, these are things I'm all learning from trial and error and videos off YouTube. You know, I'd like to go into an actual professional environment where they actually teach it.
Somebody mentor you.
I kind of thought that's what college was going to be. I was going to learn video production. I was going to learn like digital media. I was going to learn like Photoshop, and it's not. Like even I'm in advertising. There's a little bit of shit that they teach you about Photoshop, which I learned in 2000. You know, in high school when the first Photoshop was like coming out. I've been really disappointed in the practical shit that I've learned at San Diego State University. I think theoretical stuff's really good, and I think this semester will be interesting because I'm taking a social media analytics class. I think that'll be a good class. Yeah. But overall, it's like, YouTube's way better. But it's just my own experience.
Well, no, you got to have the theory. You have to have the baseline for how stuff works.
Yeah.
Before you can. Well, not necessarily.
Not necessarily, but it gives you a better understanding.
Yeah. So you can understand why you're doing stuff instead of just doing stuff.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, it's the same thing even for like a programming language, right? Like I taught myself SQL to get the job that I have now. And there's like SQL, but then there's the way that our team uses SQL. There's like nuances in it. So it's kind of the same thing. Like you have to have that base knowledge before you can start like jumping around and doing all the shortcuts, right?
Yeah.
Just like CAS. Teach everybody the 12-step or the execution template, whatever the hell it's called.
Yeah.
And then it's different when you're actually doing it and like stuff
situation dictates.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the nuances of it. Yeah, for sure.
Everything comes back to CAS.
It has to, right?
Yeah.
In our world. Man. Can you still go back to flying? Like if you wanted to go back in the reserves or something like that, could you?
Yeah, I could. And I mean I still know everybody at the reserve unit. So, I mean, it would be a little bit of a slog for me to get there just because of the paperwork and like I haven't flown in 2 or 3 years and there would need to be a spot open.
Yeah.
But I mean, I could probably be back flying in 3 to 6 months if I wanted to.
Wow. Yeah. So you don't fly at all on your own? Civilian flights like Cessnas or anything?
It's too expensive, man. I got kids and I like golfing. So it's like shooting, right? Like I wanted to shoot, I wanted to keep flying, and I wanted to play golf. And like the only rational thing that I can do in my life right now is
play golf.
Maybe play golf once a month.
Yeah.
So
that sucks. I feel like that's something I'd want you, like once you do it, it seems like you'd want to do it all the time.
Yeah. It's cool.
Aren't you an instructor?
Yeah. I have all my FAA instructor quals, and it's funny because everybody always says this. They're like, "Well, why don't you just go be a pilot? Why don't you go do all this?" And it's hysterical because coming out of January before COVID, the MBV stuff, I had gone down to a job fair for pilots, and I was like, maybe the corporate world isn't right for me. I'm just going to go back and be a pilot. And then like, that was one of the irons I had in the fire. And then everything went sideways and all these pilots started getting laid off. And it's like, oh, thank God.
Thank God I didn't choose that one.
Just like get in there.
Yeah. I think Emilio got out of that world just in time too. He was doing airline stuff. Yeah. Now he's a, what do they call him? The adversary pilot.
Aggressor pilot.
Aggressor pilot.
You want to talk about an awesome job,
dude? I was gonna ask him if it's got to be sick.
Those guys are all. When you think of like your typical Top Gun like jet pilot bro, that's what they are.
That's what the aggressor pilots are.
Most of them are like airline pilots full time or something similar, and then they just like
let loose in
then they just come to ride the motorcycle on the weekends, man.
That's fucking cool. So, I need to have him back on the show if he can and talk about like that, what that's like being an aggressor pilot, because it's got to be different than when he was in, because those aren't military guys, right? They're all civilian contractors.
No, they're all
or is he in the reserves?
It's a reserve unit, so I don't know if they have civilian contractors. I imagine that they have to have some just to be able to keep everybody current.
Probably,
but
just like they have civilian contractor CAS,
right?
Yeah, but
most of those guys are probably reserve. I know they're most reservists. So
what a cool gig that would be.
Oh yeah. Well, they had the what is it? I think it's this. I want to say it's the 66 Aggressor Squadron. That's probably completely wrong, but it's the unit in Vegas in the Air Force that they fly like the Russians, or they used to fly like the Russians. So now they're probably focusing on like a couple other different countries' tactics.
Yeah.
But they used to I remember the pictures, like in every squadron that you walk into, there's a board that has pictures of all the pilots.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like a thing that they have, right? You walk in there and they've got pictures and they're all in Russian uniforms. And I was like, this is so cool.
They really buy into it, huh?
You would go there and they would hold these classes once every 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And they would basically go over the 3TAC1, the threat manual, and like all of the updates in this. And like I went to one of those at Nellis back in like 2014, 2013. And it was just awesome. It was just really cool.
I bet they have access to some interesting information.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Nothing we could talk about on here.
No, for sure. But I mean, like the stuff that they would talk about, and they would fly. I think they flew F-16s, but they would fly them at the exact speed and turn radius, all the things that are important for jet pilots, like as Russian planes.
Yeah, they would do like the MiG profile.
Yeah.
Man, that would be cool. Something like that. You think you could ever see yourself doing anything else, like outside of the corporate world now, or is that it? You're done. Like never contract again, never, or not again, but ever.
There's been a couple of times where I get into investing pretty hard over like April all the way through now. Mm-hmm. So it's been super. I mean, it's
a good time to be in investing,
right? It's been like a record year, so I can't just be like, oh man, I'm so successful at this, I'm gonna quit my job and do this for a living.
There's probably a lot of people that are making that mistake,
right? And I like to think that I'm smart enough not to be that naive, but I have thought about doing something similar to that, and then maybe going and being a C-17 pilot in the Air Force Reserves, because you've never seen an unhappy C-17 pilot.
Those dudes, because they can bring everything they want with them, and they go to all the cool places.
Yeah. And like, I remember when I went to Afghanistan, I didn't go over on like the commercial air like everybody else did. I flew over in a C-17 with a Cobra and a Huey in the back of it.
That's fun.
And like, we landed in Germany after flying from Camp Pendleton. We flew to Germany, landed, got out. Guys took us to this hotel. They're like, all right, so don't go to this place. The Chinese restaurant is sick. Go eat there because you're not going to have any real food for the next 7 months. You're like, we'll see you in 24 hours. And then they just left, like went to work out, grabbed a couple of beers, and then we all hopped on the plane, and then they flew into Afghanistan. And it's like, all right, so do you guys need me to help you get rooms here? And they're like, bro, no, we're going back to Germany. Good luck.
Like we'd stay here.
They like unloaded the helicopters in 45 minutes, and they were like, we'll see you guys
later.
Not
staying with the poors out here. Look at you people. Yeah. Living in the dirt.
So, I mean, I could see myself doing something like that, but
I've always heard that's one of the best kept secrets in the military is being like a C-17, C-130 pilot, something like that.
Yeah. At the same time, there's always always in the back of my head, I'm like, yeah, that's sweet now, but there's that chance that it's not sweet in like 5 years. And do I want to put myself in that position again?
Yeah,
because I'm lucky enough right now, like I have to get up early and work. So because the team, to make meeting people in New York and Maryland and India at the same time, the only time that works is from like 5 to 7 in the morning.
Oh, really?
So I'm up at 5:30 every morning, and I run through my meetings. That's usually done at like 7:30.
Wow.
I'll have breakfast, hang out with my kid for a little bit, and then I'll have like 2 distinct 2.5 to 3 hour like work blocks, right? So I have the ability to basically choose when I work. Like, I don't know if I would ever want to give that up.
Yeah.
and it's not like.
And you're doing all this from home?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm doing it from home. There's no commute. I'm not away from my family.
You're in San Diego.
Right. And when COVID goes away, I'll probably have to travel, I don't know, every 2 months. I imagine I'll have to go out to the East Coast. And then I'm guessing once a year, I'll probably have to go to
nothing wrong with that, though.
India. So
I've always wanted to go to India.
Face to face. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with getting out and doing that every once in a while, but do I want to put myself in the position where I'm gone 7 to 10 days a month again? No.
Yeah.
And that's what I always go back to, because flying a big plane like that, I've already been through flight school. It's easy.
Yeah.
There's not a lot. You're not doing. I'm sure there are difficult things about it, but in comparison to flying a helicopter at 50 feet at night, like flying at 35,000 feet,
just cruising,
just
turn on cruise control.
Yeah, exactly.
Flip that bitch on.
There's a reason that they have a stove in the cockpit.
Oh,
so,
really?
Yeah.
That's cool. They're living the good life.
Yeah, so it's one of those things. If I was single and didn't have any kids, I would probably still be in the Marine Corps. Maybe, I don't know about that, but I would strongly consider doing the Air Force Reserve thing, and then just investing in playing golf.
Just kind of living.
Just hanging out.
Yeah. That's cool. I do miss the travel. That's what you would get from that. That's the big perk of that, is the go cool places, see cool things.
Exactly.
We got paid to go together. We went to Singapore, we went to Hong Kong. We went, and I'm not talking about on ship. Flying, we went to Hong Kong and Malaysia. Yeah. Remember when we flew into Malaysia and I thought we were crashing? Like that fucking pilot slammed.
All the overhead compartments came down.
Dude, he slammed. It was like, welcome to wherever it was we landed. I was like, holy shit, I thought we just went into the ground.
Yeah.
That's the scariest landing I've ever experienced, I think, in a plane.
I do remember that one. You were sitting in front of me and you turned around and you were like, is that normal? I was like, no, Kramer.
It was a little aggressive.
I've never been on a plane where all the overhead compartments have opened on landing.
That shit was crazy. And it was right after those that same airline was having different aircraft crash. Yeah, it was Malaysian Airlines right after they had.
Because I remember I booked us on Malaysian Airlines.
And we joked about it.
I never even thought about it. And you were like, what are you doing?
Yeah, we joked about it later, like, oh, Malaysian Airlines. And then we almost crashed and died.
Yeah, that was a solid trip because we flew out there straight with no stops, which was good because we hit all the things we needed to do. Like in Malaysia, we got to do them on time.
Yeah. And that was like 16 hours or some shit, wasn't it? 15 hours? We flew to Hong Kong and then into Malaysia.
No, we flew from San Diego to Dallas, Dallas to Hong Kong, Hong Kong to Kuala Lumpur, Kuala Lumpur
to Sabah. Yeah.
Yeah. That was like a day-long trip.
Man, that was horrible.
The flight alone from Dallas to Hong Kong was 12 hours.
I remember the flight. We got drunk, passed out, woke up, a little hungover, started drinking again. Like, it was so long. It was like, I watched like 5 movies at least.
Yeah.
That's horrible, man, flying like that.
Yeah. Especially when, not to sound super privileged, but having to do that in coach.
Oh, my God.
It's a wildly different experience from like when I did it when I flew to Vietnam. We were able to use my wife's airline miles and we upgraded to business class. And that was like dope. You get those seats that fold all the way flat.
So really?
So you could sleep. And the food was unbelievable. So
I remember when we were flying to Hong Kong, I had a little Asian lady sitting next to me. And I passed out and I woke up and she was gone. I never saw her for the rest of the trip. I was
she probably sat down. She was like, Jesus Christ,
Jesus,
I have to be next to this monster.
Yeah, this fucking bear is sitting next to me. I was probably snoring. But yeah, man. Well, I know you're on a time limit, so I'm gonna cut it here. I appreciate you coming on the show. Again, you were like one of the first 10 guests, and I'm almost to. This is episode 97, almost to 100 now. So it's pretty wild, man. We'll have to have you come on again and catch up and see what's going on in the corporate world. Maybe we'll have some questions from people, in the future about whatever big tech and all that. It's getting spicy out there
for sure.
Do you have anything you want to promote or anything before we get off? Is there anything you want to cover before we get off?
If you're interested, just look at the MBV program. Nothing but good things to say about it.
Yeah, I'll cut that clip out where we talked about it and upload that by itself, just so people can kind of, use that as a reference when they're looking into it.
Yeah, for sure. I guess it's the only thing I got to plug.
Cool.
So.
Well, everyone out there, hit up my Instagram, J Kramer Graphics, at Former Action Guys, and my website, jkramergraphics.com. Check that shit out.